Hello and welcome back to Sprite Guard Plays HyperRogue. We are on the long, strange adventure of a lifetime, going into, I think, part 8 of episode 22. This has been one of the most enjoyable and successful runs I have ever had in this game, and I am just thrilled to pieces. We are on the lookout for a graveyard. We are going to check out the Haunted Woods. I'm really excited to see it. I have been having dreams about the Haunted Woods. I'm so excited for it. It's a really interesting place, and I am really looking forward to finding out kind of how it works. And we have quite a bit of heat on us already. I'm going to see if I can get these guys to line up, and then we can take them out one at a time. And I will just step back here, let them line up again. And this time we have the troll in front, which is a little bit easier to deal with. And then we can deal with this fat guard. So we are just looking for a graveyard, and there's kind of no telling when we will find it. We just have to be a little bit patient and a little bit observant. What is this? Orb of Friendship. That could be very useful. So that has the 3 bumps on it. I'm trying to remember what other orb we saw had the 3 bumps, and I'm not remembering, but I think there may not be a huge point to trying. I guess it's just a matter of curiosity, trying to figure out if there's some pattern in the different borders on the orbs. As I've mentioned, I love that has been added at all. That is a really handy feature to have. And what is this? This is an orb of flash. I can tell right away. We haven't been to Relia, so it's not all that difficult to tell. Oh, looks like our bird has gotten into a fight with a guard. And it looks like we have a metal beast and a zombie coming up. So that was not really how I wanted to spend my flash. But we are kind of getting more heat than I am really comfortable with. So we want to go in eventually to the graveyard here and get our necromancer totems. And I am just going to try and scope out, let's see. Okay, so it looks like we're actually out of the aggro range for that metal beast. So if we kind of continue on here, looks like we have another one coming up here. And so I'm going to grab this orb of air. It's not the best insurance policy, but it is something at least. So these guys, they move slowly, and you can stun them quite effectively. But it looks like our bird might get... Okay, no, he's coming along. So let us see if we can escape that thing's aggro range and just start gathering up necromancer totems. And we don't even really need to stay within sight of the crossroads, because what we are looking for is in the graveyard itself. And so we are not too worried about having to find our way back to a crossroads and then find our way back to the land that we're looking for. So, the Haunted Woods, based on an idea by Wonderful Lizard of Oz, of a land that appears horocyclic, but is not. And so we're going to see what kind of subtleties there are to that. And there's an extremely difficult achievement that has been added called There and Back Again. Or no, the one for the Haunted Woods is... Because there were 2 extremely difficult navigation challenges. Master Survivalist is the one for the Haunted Woods. And the way that... Oh boy, okay. There we go. Got that. Oh, looks like our bird died and exploded. That's alright though. Looks like the shadow is not deterred by fire. So we have quite a bit of combat coming up. The ghosts are the most important to deal with. So we want to deal with them first. The necromancers are actually pretty important to deal with because they're the ones that raise the zombies. And it looks like we have found another crossroads. So I'm going to kind of hang out near there. We don't really want an orb of safety right now. Now, I know that there was a change to the not dipping rule. I don't think it's going to affect us here, but basically, it used to be that if you were in one land and you had 11 treasures in a land that you were bordering on, you would not see any treasures in that land, or 11 more treasures than the land that you're currently in. And so when the Windy Land was, or the Windy Plains was added, what changed was people could just wait on the edge for feathers to blow around in the wind. And so now it's actually changed so that if you're in a land but near the border and you have 11 or more treasures, you will not see any treasures. So I think that's, I mean, that kind of, it nerfs the cheese that I had been using of, you know, not exactly the Windy Plains strat, but a very similar strat of just staying very close to the crossroads so that you always have an immediate exit. So we have unlocked the Haunted Woods, and we want to head out into the graveyard and see if we can find it. I believe it will not spawn within sight of the crossroads, so we actually need to get away from that. And then just keep a lookout, you know, keep mindful of combat. Okay. So, the graveyard, I remember now that the graveyard, let's see, I think used to get more difficult with number of kills and now does not, is my memory of the patch notes. I'm now kind of wondering if I should double check the patch notes. I remember that it was one way and now it's the other way, but I don't remember. I think it no longer scales with number of kills, which is good because, well, I guess it would scale with this 269 total kills, not this 2,000 mutant ivy kills, regardless. But we have a lot of kills. I usually go into the graveyard around 100 kills. And so, if that was in fact nerfed, that is really good. So, this is the Haunted Woods. So, as you can see, it looks very much like a horocyclic land. And there are trees that we can cut. I think, yes, we can cut trees. And we're going to have some heat coming in from the graveyard. Because the graveyard seems to be throwing a lot of stuff at us right now. So I'm going to just kind of try and cut a path like this. Basically like what I do in the forest. Just cut a really wide path so that we can really tell where we've been. Because the thing about this land is that even though it looks horocyclic, it is not. And basically there is a boundary, and if you think about the tide, if you come up on a tide land, it looks like a horocyclic land. That's why I can never tell whether something is a whirlpool or a tide land until I have kind of gotten close to it and I can see whether or not the boats are moving. We also want to pick up all of the dead orbs that we see along the way because we're going to need them. So the thing here is that it's like coming up to the tidelands and it looks like it's a horocyclic land, and you know, when you're out in the ocean, out very near the high tide line, or the low tide line, I mean, it has that same property that horocyclic lands have where almost any direction you go in is going to take you out. And the directions that take you back in are, there's not very many. There's usually only one direction you can actually step in that will take you towards the center. And everything else will eventually take you away from the center. So once you get to the Great Wall, though, you're kind of in more of a flat space where directions can take you kind of anywhere. And then once you cross the Great Wall, there's actually more directions you can go in that will take you away from the low tide line than there are that will take you to it. So there's an invisible line in the Haunted Woods, as I understand it. And when you cross that line, it's like crossing the Great Wall into the crossroads. You're suddenly in a normal hyperbolic land where you cannot retrace your steps with any kind of ease. And so at that point, it is very difficult to find your way out of the Haunted Woods, and it's actually kind of an alternative loss condition if you get lost in the Haunted Woods and are just unable to return, which I think is pretty cool. So we have, what do we have here? A fresh grave. So we have graves, ghosts, trees, and some treasures that we've picked up, black lotuses. And we've picked up 2 of them. So, because of the way that curves work in this game, we actually are not going to find anything this way. Being on an outer cycle of a curve will mean that, no matter how far you go along the edge of the curve, you'll actually end up going very little distance relative to inner parts of the curve, and so we're not actually going to, relative to where the treasures are, we're not going to cover very much ground at all. And so what I want to do for a little bit is farm up some dead orbs, because my plan basically is to create a really clear path. Now, the Master Survivalist achievement that I mentioned earlier, very difficult achievement where you cannot use orbs, you cannot use cutting down trees. The only way that you can navigate is basically by, well, as I understand it, by just knowing the lay of the land, basically. And so it's, I imagine it's possible. It's certainly something that seems like you could do. I am so bad at navigating in this game that I don't think I will ever be able to do it. But it's something to work on. And the other achievement that I mentioned, there and back again, is actually to find your way back to your starting point after collecting 100 treasures. Which, kind of for the same reasons, is extraordinarily difficult. My thought of how to do it would be to reset until you spawn next to a jungle. And then use an ivy. Cut an ivy down until it just has 2 or 3 branches, and then lead those branches around so that you can explore the game pretty freely. So let's see, I'm going to put 1 there and 1 there. We don't have very many of these, so you have to be pretty conservative about how we use them. And so I want to place them in a way that I will be able to recognize that they are mine and not just random ones. So I'm going to put them right next to each other like that, because that's a pretty unlikely pattern. And then we're just going to see if we can try and get a little bit deeper into the woods. So we have a black lotus over here, so I'm going to cut some trees. We're going to remember that there's that grave there. And then going to just cut a swath this way so that we have a really clear path back to these dead orbs. And they're going to be right on the edge of our screen. So we really want to leave a wide open path. And really remember that they are going away at 2 o'clock here as we go up to these. And they're going to move to about 3 o'clock as we do this, but I think as we come back here, yeah, they kind of return to 2 o'clock as long as we retrace our steps. So we only have 3 dead orbs right now. I see some more treasures over here, so I'm going to just create another one like this that will let us see our way to these black lotuses. So Black Lotus, the name, I believe the only association I have with that name is the game Magic the Gathering, the most valuable card in that game. It sells for tens of thousands of dollars. It's extremely rare. There was a video not too long ago of a guy who had a bunch of boxes of Alpha, which is the Alpha version of Magic the Gathering. It was the very first set that they did kind of to test the game, and so there was a very short run. There are very few unopened Alpha packs, and somebody opened a pack of 60. And one of the rare cards in that pack was a Black Lotus. I'm going to pick up these dead orbs here so that we don't get confused. And then this one over here. But I have been neglecting combat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, there. And I have to remember that ghosts cannot get next to each other. That is really one of the things that makes them possible to deal with. So let's see, this is going to point our way back to the other two. So let's see, we have another Black Lotus to pick up. So it was really neat seeing this video of this guy discovering that, this hobby of his that was, worth a substantial amount of money, and that he happened to be a very lucky and very savvy person to even have this pack and be opening it on video. And he had this YouTube channel where he would have people watch him open these boxes. And then he would give away one of the commons. So that is our 10th Black Lotus, and I have not seen an achievement pop up, which is a little bit odd. I am connected to the internet, that shouldn't be an issue. I am playing the Steam version because the non-Steam version is not, doesn't have the Haunted Woods yet. Maybe we have to escape first, which we can certainly do. New achievement, Dark Ghost. Collect 10 Black Lotuses and escape. And we also got the Reach the Haunted Woods achievement. So I guess none of that matters until you escape. Which makes sense because, as I said, escaping the Haunted Woods is kind of part of the challenge. So that's really cool, and I'm really interested to kind of see, as I figure out how to navigate there, what other kinds of things I can do. Really interested to kind of see if I can start to figure out the shape of the Haunted Woods and figure out how long, how deep is the curved part of it, and how deep is the half-plane part of it. Well, I mean, the half-plane part of it is infinitely deep, but try and figure out where the boundary is. I don't know that it's entirely possible to figure out where that boundary is, but kind of sounding it out would be really interesting. But for now, I want to return to the crossroads because we have some kind of unfinished business there. I really want to start picking up some of the orbs that we have not seen yet. And to that regard, we want to collect more mutant saplings, more mutant fruit. And I believe on the overview, let's see, I believe there's an Orb of Empathy that we can unlock. Let's see, Orb of Summoning, we've seen that one. Dragon, Teleport, Water, Time, Fish. We have unlocked the Orb of Empathy, so we'll be looking out for that. Orb of Love was glitched when I completed the Princess Quest, and so we will have to do that again if we want to see the Orb of Love, so that will probably be in a future video. Right now I am going to check the time because I don't want this to get out of hand, and we have been going for 20 minutes, so I am actually going to be on the hunt for an Orb of Safety. We've already gone a little bit longer than I usually like to go. But these update videos, that is a tendency that kind of happens pretty often, just because I want to see everything and I want to complete things. So we will have a a golem following us around. That will give me some peace of mind. So we have a princess quest waiting for us when we decide to do that. But that was so difficult, and it was so difficult to commentate, that I think I need to level up my skills quite a bit before I can do that on camera again. I've also been thinking about ways of making the Camelot quest more interesting so that I can do that on camera again, and I think that is going to require getting much better at navigating and also kind of getting much better at commentating, just because it's something that I kind of... I think that it's possible to commentate the Camelot quest if you have a really clear idea of what you're doing. And there's going to be a lot of counting no matter what you do, I think. So this was one of those rare circumstances where we don't really want to pick up an Orb of Flash, even though it would be a really good insurance policy. That's kind of the one thing that I don't like about the Orb of Life, is that it's actually difficult to put some distance between yourself and it. And so having the Orb of Flash is a little bit of a liability when you have your golem following you around. I mean, all it will really do is take you back to the state of not having a golem, which isn't actually all that bad because... oh my goodness, orbs of safety are just not manifesting. We were seeing so many of them just a moment ago when we were in the graveyard, and now we are seeing none. So the dead orbs actually still have the plain outline, which I think is very fitting for them because they have no magic. And yet they're one of the most useful and important orbs in the game. That's an Orb of Storms, we don't really want that. Might be useful as well, it's because you can't prevent those from triggering. It's very tricky. And now we have no golem, and so it's much more appealing. So let's head back for that. We can still see where it is. And let us get on our way, and let us actually grab this Orb of Air and use it to save our Orb of Storms a little bit. Blow these guys away. There we go. We actually have quite a lot of air. We can probably push this guy away too. There we go. So that should have them even out of aggro range, so we can just head along. Oh, it looks like the troll is still after us. But that's alright. Oh! Tried to blow him into the pit, but that did not work. I guess it just blows him directly away from my character, not based on where my cursor is pointing. So here's another dead orb. Let's see, is that an Orb of Safety? I think it is. Yes, it is. Alright, there we go. Drop into that. So in the next part of this episode, we will be looking for the orbs that we have not seen yet. And we will be looking to get the last of our mutant saplings, and maybe mutant fruit, though the mutant fruit are very tricky, and so that's probably I'm going to save for last. Until then, thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.